Hey, good morning, Team Arkansas. What an exciting day today. You've asked for it. We've got the man to help us. We're here today with Coach Robert Otero from Team Conquer, and we're going to talk a little bit about nutrition. But we're going to talk about the sport of wrestling. Coach, welcome. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing well, sir. I appreciate you having me on. Um, I'm excited to kind of start this series and talk about things that parents and wrestlers can do to optimize their success furthermore.
Let's talk about the sport of wrestling. How'd you get into it? What's your background? What's your story?
I started wrestling in Tulsa, Oklahoma, about 2006 at the age of 7, and I'm 25 now, so that's about 18-ish years. I was a 4-time high school state qualifier in Oklahoma out of Catoosa, and I was a state placer my senior year, 2016, at 152 pounds. Uh, Senior year wrestling 152 at Catoosa. I went on to the Division II level to Ouachita Baptist, where I wrestled at 141 pounds. Um, and all that kind of played in and was pivotal for me really finding out how this human body works. And it sparked my curiosity to begin the nutrition journey and whatnot.
Yeah, so obviously you love the sport. You've been around it since you were a youngin. Some of the higher level stuff, we talk about Catoosa and Oklahoma wrestling, and then even into Coach Crutchford's program there at Ouachita Baptist. So good lineage there. What kind of inspired your passion for nutrition? You actually have dedicated your education to the subject too, correct?
Yes, I have my bachelor's and master's in nutrition and dietetics at Ouachita Baptist. And I also last year completed over 1,200 hours for my internship. And that includes sports nutrition, clinical, and a lot of different avenues. It's kind of a very large field. But what started my pursuit in nutrition was kind of, for younger kids, everybody wants to get big, everybody wants to be strong. So kids start hitting the weight room. And that was a very short introduction. And then the more time I spent wrestling, the more my curiosity sparked, and how I was very, I think I was just curious about how this human body works. I had to make a lot of mistakes, do a lot of things wrong, unfortunately. Like I'm sure a lot of coaches will admit, I was running, doing excessive amounts of cardio, sauna suits, all getting better at cutting weight, but not getting better at wrestling. So that really sparked my interest in what I can do to optimize myself so that by the third period, I'm full of energy, I'm pumped up, ready to go. And this guy across the mat from me, he's about ready to clock in, his check engine light's turning on.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've picked up over the years in coaching and having the opportunity this last year, I went to the Olympic Training Center and sat in with their nutrition side. And and it goes across the board, kind of to your story, even at the highest level, like Kyle Dake, they even used him as an example. And they asked him, "What would you have done better back in the day?" And all of them say their nutrition, right? So starting at a
Mm-hmm.
at a younger age and working into their high school careers, even into their college careers, to your point, right? The highest level of athletes struggle with this as well. You're
Mm-hmm.
talking, Adeline Gray and those people were sharing their stories about, hey, if I would have been able to do my nutrition better, if I understood, like you said, the check engine lights coming up, but we can really affect that with what we eat and what we fuel our body with. What's one thing I think it's not as simple as always one thing, but what is one thing that parents and kids can do, especially at the youth level? What can they start doing now to kind of improve that performance?
I think the biggest thing would be to realistically plan ahead. A lot, especially high schoolers, they're very, they've got their blinders on. They're very unilaterally focused, and they don't really plan ahead for the 6 month season, 5, 6 months. So rather than thinking, okay, can I cut this weight and stay at this weight for 6 months? Or would it be better for me to make sure that I'm focusing on my time in the weight room, my endurance, my practices, my sleep schedule, class, etc., getting bigger, faster, stronger, and fitting into the weight class above, which is, counterintuitive to my profession is teaching people how to properly weight cut. But finding the right weight class is so, so important. And then having small, achievable goals at first, things like hyperhydration and meeting their appropriate amount of protein and calorie needs. Those are just little things that athletes can start on and don't realize they have the power to manage at an earlier stage than waiting till the day before a tournament to shoot me a text and say, "Hey, coach, I'm 7 over. I haven't had water in 2 days. What do I do?" Because my answer is always going to be, "I can't help you." It takes a long time for the body to get to the lean stage that it needs to be, and then a good understanding of the body for them to drop that water weight out of the muscle glycogen and make weight without having to risk performance or injury.
So let's put it in layman terms. I'm a youth coach. I got some D4, D5s that are, past puberty. They're starting to work on they're setting their weight classes. What's the easiest way to explain hyperhydration to them?
So hyperhydration is essentially oversaturating, filling up your body's cells with more than enough water. I think of it like a faucet being turned on. That faucet's running as high as it can. And that hyperhydration, because water hydration is so important, it's going to help the wrestler practice better. It's going to make sure that the water soluble vitamins are able to function appropriately. Um, it's going to help with mental clarity, uh, improve recovery. There's so many different things that water has to be the very last thing that gets cut off. So I always recommend to my athletes to carry their water with them to actually measure how much they're consuming, because a lot of athletes, they go, "Oh, well, I get a drink in between class." That's not enough. That's not measurable. That's not realistic. You're not giving, your nutrition coach anything to deal with in that situation other than maybe I had a big sip, small sip. That's not real measurements. So to help, your high school and middle school wrestlers tracking how much water they consume, maybe starting off with an ounce of water per pound of body weight, and then increasing their protein needs. Wrestling's a hard sport. It's an enduring sport. You're getting grinded down, and if you're not giving yourself the amino acids, the building blocks to build back up, you can expect to see the late fatigue that you would see in season with athletes, to where they kind of look like they've been through a war zone. At the beginning of the year, they had huge muscles, they were energized, and now it looks like they just deflated and they're just no longer prepared to take on the task that's ahead of them. Typically for my athletes, I recommend between 1.5 grams to 2.2 grams of protein. And it really just depends on the individual. And that's why it's important to plan ahead, so that by the time the first competition comes around, you've actually had a trial run before this where there wasn't, a team score on the line or an individual ranking on the line. You're prepared to win, because if you're not preparing to win, you're shooting an arrow in the dark.
That's right. Yep. And I think that in hearing you talk about it, and what I hear you saying too, a lot of it is data driven, right? It's measurements.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like anything performance based, where you're going to put X amount of hours in the room. That same. And I always tell people, and I believe this, and you're kind of a testament to it. That wrestling is two sports in one, right? It's the sport of
Mm-hmm.
technique and drilling, and it's the sport of physical fitness and weight management, right? And
Yes.
so what you're kind of offering up, and I love it, is that um, you can take control of your macros and your micros, and
Mm-hmm.
understand your performance level by measuring intake and performance. And so it's a
Mm-hmm.
vital part of success in this sport. So tell us a little bit about your business. Your business works toward that goal. You got a Facebook page you've launched.
Yeah,
What's
so
kind
I
of the
have this
message?
Facebook page called the Fab Five Wrestling Nutrition Formula Unleashed, and essentially the Fab Five formula, it's the blueprint for the wrestler. It's free to anyone who wants to join the group. I'd like to accept people to the group as a private group, just to make sure that the group is being filled with people who are actually there for the right reasons and not just anybody. But the Fab Five formula, it talks about macronutrient regulation, hyperhydration, a low residual 24-hour strategy. A residual is a food item or a component of a food item that would deter a wrestler trying to make weight. For example, sodium, water retention, things of that nature. Fiber, also water retention, slows gastric motility. And I also include things like for wrestlers to add certain supplements that Americans may typically be chronically low in that help improve gastric motility. Nothing crazy like some um, root or anything like that. It's just a literal vitamin that people are just generally low in. Um, could you reframe that question for me one more time?
So what can someone hire you as a personal nutritionist? Is that kind of where your model is? Or are you
Yes,
working?
yes, yes. So I am a sports nutritionist. Um, After getting my 4-year undergrad degree and master's degree and performing the over 1,200 hours of my internship, I finally started getting the ball rolling on nutrition coaching. Typically, I work with athletes for about 8 weeks, and in those 8 weeks, I do things such as figuring out their macros for them. So an initial assessment, 8 follow-ups biweekly. We're seeing what's working for us, what's not. A lot of athletes tend to struggle with keeping their food journal, and it's actually not as hard as it may seem. It's just the idea of starting something new because, especially kids these days, they're creatures of habits. They've always eaten the same thing over and over and over again. So they should know that eyeballing this, that's going to be about 21 grams of protein. So in doing so, I know that that's going to contribute X because it's you don't have to always keep every calorie in detail, but having a good understanding of the body is important. I also help with tailored nutrition plans as far as like a 24-hour residual strategy, what that athlete prefers to eat and what they can do to get their weight down as low as possible. And then I do rehydration and refueling strategies. We talk about the difference between the macros and the differences between the same macros because it's really just it's never as simple as it looks. But the goal is in that 8 weeks to not just tell the athlete what to do, but to educate them. Because if this athlete's able to do it with my help in high school, and then they go to college and they just don't have anything retained and they're not able to perform at the college level, then I didn't do a good job. My job is to teach uh, as well as to coach.
So you're looking at high level performers, or even the youth mom or dad. Because I'm a high school coach, and we're trying to work on getting our nutrition right and stuff. And there's sometimes a gap between what I know is the right food versus what the booster club shows up. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that you can help improve on as far as typical menus and stuff like that. And I think what we'll do is we'll talk in another episode about what are some specific foods and menus that a team could bring. The cycle goes like this. We all hit our weight, and I know more for the high school side than the youth. We do a lot of remote weigh-in stuff, but we do have dedicated weigh-in sites now. We're doing Triple Crowns. They had to weigh in. State tournament, obviously, you have to weigh in. So that nutrition starts even at the youngest of ages to be performing right. And I think hearing you, it's not always just about weight cut, right? It's also about the performance of your athletes when
Yes.
when they wrestle that first match. And you know this from your extensive wrestling. You may wrestle your first match, get to the quarters, and have to wait through another 2-3 hours of consoles to run and stuff. What do kids eat? What do they do in that time period, right?
So let's just hypothetically say it's the beginning of a high school tournament. You've got a 1 hour weigh in between or 2 hour weigh in, 1 hours to eat, an hour to warm up, and then you could be a 6 pounder right on the mat first match of the day. It's different for everybody. For the 6 pounder and for everybody, I do recommend carbohydrates. Um, I recommend fluids and electrolytes. Those are the three main big things at first for the immediate matches. The reason I recommend those is because carbohydrates are going to be converted to glucose quicker. So that is going to get into the wrestler's bloodstream quicker. And it's also going to be refueling those glycogen stores. Glycogen is just the stored form of carbohydrates. Carbs typically digest a lot quicker. So things like honey, fruit, even Gatorades. I'm not a huge fan of certain sports drinks, but the liquids are going to dissolve quicker, be uptaken quicker than a solid. Um, Things of that nature. And then as the tournament goes on and you have longer periods, having small amounts of proteins and fat, but still focusing on fluids, electrolytes, and carbohydrates, simply because protein can take 4 hours to digest. Lipids, fats can take 7 to 9 hours. So if you're eating a bunch of peanut butter, you might not actually get that in your body up until tournaments being over, and that's just going to slow the wrestler down. I'm sure you've seen lots of wrestlers at the very beginning of a tournament. They feel good, the warm up's going good, but then that third period comes and it's time to get into a dogfight, and they're just holding on to a leg, trying to get by, trying not to give up that takedown, rather than being the offensive predator. That point scoring machine that they were training to be all year.
Yep. That's good stuff. Well, Coach Otero, let me tell you, Arkansas wrestling is on the rise. Our D1 program is in the top
They've
20.
been doing good.
They have our other schools. A lot of people don't realize that Arkansas is, besides the state of Iowa, is the only state that has wrestling at all levels. JUCO, NAIA, D1, D2, and D3, and so we're on the scene. I got to tell you, caveat to what I'm about to say, but they did an article in the Amateur Wrestling News, which is kind of the college, circular around, and they're like, "Where's this Little Rock come out of?" They're kicking butt, and one of the little lines in there, and the guy says, "Well, admittedly, Arkansas is not a hotbed for high school and youth wrestling," and that personally gets to me, right? Because I want to get there. I want to get there, and I know you're an Oklahoman by trade, but that caveat goes into this. You came to the state of Arkansas, you wrestle for an Arkansas school, you give back to our Arkansas wrestling through Team Conquer, and now launching this performance and nutrition. One, I want to thank you for that. And two, I think this is how we get to that next level, right? If our kids are starting to go out to national events, they're using the pin ratings, and our kids are on par with the pin ratings. Matter of fact, I look at Oklahoma and Missouri pin ratings, and our U14s are better. I venture to say better than some of their scores, right? So we're getting there. Our U14 is going to come on the scene, our cadets and juniors. And I think that by people asking, I had a parent that asked, the whole reason I reached out to you is, "Hey, how do we get better at nutrition?" And then here you were, ready to step up for the state and these wrestlers. And I think this is the next piece, brother. I think what you're doing is going to help Arkansas wrestling get to that point. So in 5 years from now, when the dude writes the article, they can say, "Hey, all of Arkansas is on the come up. Their youth, their high school, their college programs." So I want to thank you for that. And you are embedded in Arkansas wrestling, correct? You're invested.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate the praises, humbly. I'm very excited for what the state has to come. That's one of the reasons that I've stayed instead of going back home to Tulsa. Is there's an exciting atmosphere, almost like a calm before the storm that feels like it's about to erupt. And I'm excited to help these athletes be point scoring machines. Be not just, but also self-sufficient point scoring machines. I'm very humble and thankful to be able to take what I learned in college and apply that to youth wrestlers, and being able to be a voice of reason and not just some random with love, respect, internet guru that kind of came out of nowhere. I'm just excited, and I'm thankful for the opportunity.
Hey, we couldn't ask for better, Coach. I appreciate you. Next session, we're going to do another podcast. We'll get a little series going. We'll talk a little bit more about specific foods that kids and wrestlers can purchase and buy, and build some menus. And I'm excited. And if people want to find you on Facebook, they can. Where they can find you at? Where do they put it?
It's called the Fab Five Wrestling Nutrition Formula. You can also just send me a friend request on Facebook at Robert Otero. I'm sure I'm not too hard to find if you follow Arkansas wrestling, but just send me a friend request. I'll send you a message making sure that this is what you're wanting. I'll send you that link, and this information is free to parents. I don't think a parent should have to look far to find information on how to make sure their kid can perform well, not just at school, but in the classroom. It plays a part. Managing stress is super, super important, and it's one of the things I go over is watching those stress hormones, because those stress hormones are water retainers, And if we're retaining water while being stressful, which wrestling's super stressful for some of these kids, we're being counterintuitive. So anyone is free to shoot me a friend request. I'll send them a link to the Fab Five Wrestling Nutrition Formula Unleashed. But thank you so much, Robert, for having me. It's a pleasure and a blessing to be able to do this.
Hey, brother, we appreciate you and look forward to some more knowledge.
Thank you very much. You have a good one.
You too.